WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive, celebrating 25 years. The countdown has begun. I'm at 23, then 22, then 21. I swear I'm back on the horse here on that. The Orioles have been eliminated, even though I'm wearing a pretty cool shirt. Our friends at Curio Wellness and Foreign Daughter provided the sponsorship for the 25th anniversary, and I'm trying to make everybody proud with our community service and our countdowns and our memories of the barn and all the cool stuff. Time will not dim the glory of your deeds and making us happen here for 25 years. As we get into football season, Luke is out in Owings Mills. The Ravens are playing pretty well right now. The Orioles are done. And we take a little break from time to time to talk about things and educate ourselves, especially in the cannabis space and really the wellness space. Last week, we talked about the running festival and bombs and creams and different things that may have been illicit years ago, now readily available for adult use, as well as medicinal through our friends at Curio Wellness and Foreign Daughter. And Wendy Bronfein is back on the program, our defending champion for all things education about cannabis. But more than so, some weeks we're talking about flour or vapes or creams, rubs, pains, eggs. And then other weeks I think to myself, like, this is still such a new industry. And I wanted to talk to you this week a little bit about, like, when I drive by and I see people in there all the time, I'm thinking, like, this is something I saw in Colorado years ago. And I think in sort of the modern, it's come here now, and I often wonder, like, what's going to be the next thing that happens. So it's good to have you on. How are things?
Things are good. Yeah, been a good week. Good to see you again.
I need a purple shirt. I mean, it's
I
perfect,
know.
right?
Well, when I see you in person, I'm gonna give you one. We have the uniform, the jersey style shirt, which you can also buy off of our website on the merch site for
I
anyone
didn't
who's
see
interested.
I'm a blunt person.
Or did they sell out when you were there?
Yeah, I got to get one in my size too. I'm not sure if I'm a medium or large. I'm kind of working into both of those things at this point, trying to figure it all out. Yeah, for me, the questions I had this week, just more like B2B and just more like the business. I try to understand it when I come in, more than anything else, to say this is a brand new business to many people's eyes. It's so new that we're doing educational series just to explain to people ways that can be helpful to them for their wellness. And it's certainly been helpful for me. So I'm an advocate. But then I think to myself, how far does this go and how quickly did it happen? And you and your family have been in from the beginning. And when I talk to you about this stuff, I always say, you know more about this than almost anyone because your family started pretty early on in educating yourselves about where the business is going to go. Are you just quite frankly shocked or surprised that it's gotten to where it is at this point? And I guess I wouldn't have predicted this 10 years ago. And I'm 55 years old. And I think a lot of people my age just are still a little bit 3 months into adult use saying, this is kind of amazing it came here, right? And I really do think it's amazing to some degree.
I think when you're in it, it's we kind of often say that it's like cannabis years are kind of like dog years. So I think that because we live in a world of a federal state conflict, right? Cannabis is a Schedule 1 substance, but then states have legal programs, and so that creates like a push and pull. So when we started this journey, and I went to a conference to educate us and kind of report back to our group back in 2014, there was a conversation about where they thought the US government would move on this and the timeline and how many states had to create legal programs before that happened. And so I think many people in the industry, and definitely many investors in the industry, I think thought that some of the conflicts that we have on the federal level would have been resolved at this point, and that continues to kind of be a massive thorn in the side of the industry. And so,
Well, that's the
and
hardest.
then
I can't pull a credit card out, right? Like, I mean,
you can't,
uh,
yeah, you can't
right?
pull a credit card.
Cuba's the only place I've been that I think I've been where my credit card didn't, like, literally just, I couldn't pull it out. I was in China too at one point. So, but I'm thinking, like, where else can I go? There are some places in South Philly to get sauce. You got to pay cash. I've been in some smaller businesses, but there's just very few places where the just the finances alone are, it just has to be incredibly challenging on your side, and I would think expensive and opportunity, just all of the business side of that challenge that
Yeah,
a
so the
lot of
challenge
places don't have.
Yes, the challenge is there are a lot of challenges in the operation side. So the biggest things are the financial elements of the business. So Maryland is a special state where we have two different banks, Shore United and CFG Bank, who both actively work with licensees in the industry and comply with federal requirements to do so. But that's not the norm across the country. So traditional banking is a major problem. That's why you may have heard of something called SAFE, or now the SAFER Act in Congress, that would help remediate that. You cannot use a credit card because those transfer on rails that are federally controlled. And there's something called 280E, which is an element of the tax code that, because of our Schedule 1 status, it was created years ago to deal with cartels. But essentially, we cannot write off ordinary expenses as most businesses do. So cannabis companies pay millions of dollars in taxes to the federal government, and unless your state has waived that to your state government as well. So where our tax rate is not aligned with the traditional corporate tax rate, it can be 70, 80, 90% tax rate on that business. So those are major issues from a financial standpoint. And then some of the other kind of pain points can be in, who will work with you. Now, as this industry in Maryland has existed for 6 years now, I think that has helped soften it, as well as the strength of your operation and the credibility of it can get you opportunities to work with different vendors and partners who say, well, yes, I'm willing, I've assessed you and I'm willing to work with you. But oftentimes when you're dealing with other large companies who might provide a service or a product to you, their legal teams basically hit your trafficking in a set Schedule 1, even though you are in your state program that is legal. We don't want to deal with it. Right. So, you're a little bit of an outsider just to kind of go through the grind of your business day by day. It makes it a really tough business to build and run. But as we've talked about on the other side, when you have people come into stores with therapeutic needs and something is resolved or remedied or helped or treated, whatever it does for them, and you hear those stories, it's like it kind of makes all of the crazy worth it.
Well, there goes your proof, right? That
Right.
that there is medicine here. There is a lot of science here. By the way, there's a word that I'm going to be wearing the Mike TV suit here soon and touring, and I will get to that in a couple minutes. But you said something that just struck me: credibility. Right? We're talking about something here that the federal government outlawed, Schedule 1. We're going back to Nixon in my childhood and the hippie days, but before that, reefer madness and what my parents believed, being born in 1919, about the plant itself. And I think you said credibility, and credibility. How do you gain credibility 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago? Because I think places started popping up, and I saw this when I was in Colorado. I was out in Washington when I did the baseball tour. I saw places are popping up, and then worse than that, I've walked the streets of New York in recent years, and people are just coming up offering
Oh, everywhere.
wide open on the street everywhere in Manhattan after the plague. Not so bad a couple weeks ago. Went up there for a day, didn't feel it in that way. Felt like there must have been some sort of crack, but like I've seen sort of the wild, wild west of all of it, but also the structure of what it needs to be in the same way. And this is, I guess, my comparison. I remember when I was a kid, all the videotape stores popped up everywhere, and you're like, well, they can't be everywhere. At some point there'll be a Blockbuster and there'll be other places. And I think about that as well, like with sports wagering. And I talk to John Martin all the time about, everybody's going to have a license, but how many are really going to be able to sustain that? And I know you and your family took a real forward approach on this, and I would think there's other places that funding, what all of these elements that work against you, but having the faith, but more than that, the credibility to still be around. But how do you gain that in the beginning? I think from anyone, because I'm sure there are a lot of people in your social circle, your business circle, that just looked and said, no. I mean, 10 years ago, just no. And now they're more like, oh, it's like sort of, I guess when people caught on to the Beatles or Elvis or something.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is doing what you say you're going to do, right? So, like, as a regulated business, we've fully lived up to the application that we submitted like 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was. And, in terms of how we would build our facility, how we would run it, what we would make, what our intention would be. I think even now, when you're looking at that transition from medical to adult use, that authenticity of who we are remains, right? That in this industry, often that can be, a medical opportunity for some operators can be the leapfrog to adult use, right? And you're sort of playing that game to get to the adult use part of the program. But I think we've authentically maintained that across the transition. I think the fact that when we looked at this industry in the beginning, we had gone to places like Colorado, right? And when you went to a dispensary, you would see something and it would be out of stock. And then you'd ask them, well, are you getting more of that? Or what's the story? And they'd be like, I don't know. I don't have it. I don't know when I'm getting it. Right. So in coming from businesses that had more traditional distribution and retail, a customer, whether they're your B2B or B2C customer, needs to rely on the fact that your product is going to be available. And if we were making something that was going to help people with a problem or a symptom or a condition that they had, we needed to be reliable that it was going to be the same every time. It was going to be equally effective every time. And it was always going to be in the store. So we built the business relative to the scale that we could deliver for the dispensaries all the time, and that we could create products that would be repeatable. And there wouldn't be this question between like, well, last time it did this or this, it smells different, it tastes different, it looks different. Like, it's just, you go, I mean, I'm always like referring to Heinz ketchup. Like you go to the grocery store and you buy Heinz, like it always looks the same. It's the right color red. The package is the same, and it's always there. Like it's just, you need that reliability, and that breeds the credibility.
Well, I would
I
also think
think
the part of it being a plant, especially in the early going, and to all of the issues of the federal government and all these things, to say it's more like a tomato, an heirloom. You can only grow it in the summer, or a peach, or there's a season for watermelons or whatever. It couldn't be like it couldn't be seasonal like that. Well, I have that issue with crabs. You can't crab in the winter, right?
yeah. Sorry, I just got
The product
distracted.
and growing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the growing, you'll see this when you come, but the consistency of the grow is an entirely kind of different conversation in and of itself. And you're right, it is a plant. And so if you can build an environment to grow where you can control that consistency, then you are able to really ensure that that crop is the same harvest over harvest. And so the one of the ways that we know that is because all of our products are tested, right? And so when we harvest a strain, if we harvest a strain in February and we harvest again in that summer, the lab results that we get for that strain in the potency of the cannabinoids and the terpenes, are nearly the same. It is such a small margin of, was it 32% in February and 32.7 in, July or something. But there's just such consistency in the genetics that like when you buy it, every time you see it, same effect, same smell, same taste, and same terpene and cannabinoid profiles.
I guess the unsophisticated part of me 10 years ago, that if someone would have come to me and if I had money laying around and said, yeah, I'm going to go into that industry, and not just to have a storefront, but the full in, let's grow, science, all of that. The initial part would be like, oh, it's going to come in a flower like it did in Amsterdam 20 years ago, and it's going to be smoked, and it's going to come in bags. It's going to be weighed. It's going to be by the ounce, whatever it was on the black market for the beginning of time. And that would be it. And then when I got to Colorado, especially when my wife had cancer 10 years ago, right at that point, we went out there in the middle of the baseball tour in 15, she had cancer in 14, and saw not just candy bars or brownies or cookies, but starting to see all sorts of concentrates of different ways and balms and things that could really be helpful. And beyond Sanjay Gupta on CNN and watching that things that are available on the internet to educate ourselves. But the part of it that I never, I guess, understood was how laboratory and science and you having products that are very, very directed and delicious and safe and tested, and all of these things that whatever was going on in New York last summer was not in any way, especially with fentanyl and the concerns we would have, that the safety and the product. But this is not at all what I would have thought as a 40-year-old business owner for 20 years with a radio station that I would have thought 15 years ago that it would be this. I thought it was, my unsophisticated mind was always a flower in a vase or in a jar or in a container, and that would be the whole extent of the plant. And I think scratching the surface of that begins to open my mind of like, where is all of this going and how quickly did it get here? Because to your point, for you, it started 10 years ago.
Yeah, and our focus is in a lot of kind of normalizing the conversation. So when you walk into the store and you say you have X, Y, or Z issue or problem you're trying to solve, that rather than having being reliant on sort of this generic space of flower, vape, or 5 or 10 or whatever milligrams of this, that the product is much more targeted, and you say the problem, we say the answer. And so we've done that with sleep, we've done it with daytime needs of anxiety or focus, we've done that with pain and inflammation, we've done it with GI stuff. We're working on some things that are all around women's health related. In the GI space, we're going into a formal trial with a gastroenterology practice to really validate this product, just like we did with our sleep product. So that, the other issue in our space is people say things work, and they do, but everything is anecdotal, because the other constraint we have is the research constraint, and that goes back to the Schedule 1 thing. So what we've tried to do is partnering with the state, in the sense that we've had laws passed that expand our ability to do more formal research, and partner with academic institutions and medical practices that have been drafted into law here, but really normalize as much as we can in getting that validated experience under some sort of trial inside of being the Schedule 1 from a federal standpoint, and then be able to say, yes, but people tried it, it was blinded in some way, we did everything we could to really validate that this product can do what you want it to do. And I think, again, that's just another layer of the credibility conversation.
Well, yeah, I mean, it comes from a background of, what snake oil could be sold on late night TV 30 or 40 years ago for anything, right? To say that University of Maryland, local institutions are, and to your point, validating it. So when you say like a sleep product, and I guess from the beginning of mankind, people have had insomnia and have been fighting that. And there was all sorts of products that you'd see in a magazine and mail order away or whatnot. When you say validating, tell me a little bit about that, because I think that's fascinating. You clearly, the more validation and the more people that come into your store in sort of the new part of this, that it actually works. And I know we talked about Ambien, talked about things that make you dopey, like literally, and that's exactly what you're scientifically trying to stay away from, is stuff that does make you feel like I went to the quote unquote drugstore and picked up cough syrup and it made me not be able to work function in a way that we all want to be functional.
So with the product Good Night, that's the sleep product, and it uses a pulse technology. So you take it 30 minutes before bed, it doses immediately, and then it doses again 3 hours later. So what we did was we partnered with a company called Sleep Score, who has a device that monitors your sleep, a bedside device. And so this was during the time that we were medical only. So a series of medical patients were enrolled in the study. They were given this device, they had the product to trial, and then with an app that spoke to a research app that spoke to the device, it would pick up your sleeping habits and monitor it. And this was all done outside of us. So there was an independent investigator and this contract research organization, and all that we did was produce the product, and the patients picked it up from our store and were given the instructions, and then they conducted the study, and then we were given the report back on how the product functioned. And so the research overall validated the product. We saw people that had increase in their sleep, but they specifically there are different parts of your sleep, like people probably know the term REM and things like that. So there was a direct impact to a restorative state of sleep, which was very meaningful. But we also had
Now, that's
things
like
like,
when I go to pee in the middle of the night, how quickly I go back to sleep, right?
Well, no, this would be like in terms of like if your sleep is almost like when you plug your phone in and it reboots and restarts it, like how much of that sleep was actually restorative and healthy to your body in it kind of rebooting for the next day versus just like I wasn't conscious for so many hours. And there also people had noted kind of things that you just referenced, like I issues with I get up to go to the bathroom and I can't go back to sleep, or I end up taking naps during the day, or I don't feel rested. And so in these other points that people were surveyed on, they were taking less naps, they were feeling more rested. And if people did wake up, they didn't it did not impact them, or did they not have as much of a recollection like, oh right, I did go to the bathroom last night, right? But it wasn't like I got up to go to the bathroom and then that was it. I was messed up on my sleep for the rest of the night. So it was those results validated us statistically that the product was viable, and thus we then commercialized it.
Wendy Bronfein is here. We get educated about all things cannabis and Curio Wellness, and our friends at Far and Daughter around the corner. Please visit them, and if you are looking to be educated, as I have been, and my wife certainly was 10 years ago when she was battling the aftermath of leukemia. We've tried to educate ourselves, and I'm very appreciative of the partnership with Curio and our 25th anniversary. All that's at Baltimore Positive, sharing some great memories. This week, it's community and charity work we've done, as well as our long-standing barn series. So there'll be lots of pictures coming out, sort of like Halloween with me on Tony Saragusa's lap, or him holding a knife to my throat. It's a long story and a birthday cake. It was 25 years ago. It's all Wendy, for you, with talking about the science of a good night product and a study, and the time, what's the time lapse, or
Oh,
which
pulse release. Yeah, yeah. So
pulse release. So
mhm.
it's, I guess, like 8 hour relief when you had a cold medicine or whatever. Did you know all of this 10 years ago from your dad, and from you being your family really being in the pharmacy business? Did you know it was coming to tablet form, very directed, that it could completely replace a lot of the really dangerous stuff that, quite frankly, a lot of pharmacies have dispensed, in years? Um, did you know that it was going to be this science related, and that there would be a thing called a gummy with a terpene, or has that been information that's come to you in the last 10 years?
So in just like literally like this week of 2016 was the first meeting of our scientific advisory board. And that's when those types of conversations started for us. There were the ideas around we wanted to create targeted therapies with cannabis, right? Where cannabis is our active ingredient. But the chairman of our scientific advisory board holds he's a pharmacologist and he holds patents in pulse technology, right? So he brings that expertise to this group.
Wow, that's a
And
whole book unto itself, right? A
yeah,
patent on pulse technology.
and
Okay.
that good night product has now earned 2 US patents for that product based on what we've done. But the I think that what people are very familiar with flower, with vape, with a gummy type product. When we do things in a tablet form with like the good night and our good day and our GI products, we that's where we really can hone in on what, some of this quote magic, right? Because the you can make the pill do things like release inside of certain parts of your body, right? The GI product is been shown to be effective because it's not releasing until it gets deep into your gut. And it has a multi-pulse in it, just like the good day does, right? Or in the good night, which give you more of what you're referring to as that sustain, right? It's giving you a dose at one point and then it's giving you a dose later. So you can't necessarily do those things with other forms. Inhalation is an immediate release, but it can be useful when people want something, we call it like a rescue product, right? So if you have, if nausea comes over you, using a vape is going to be very quick, right? If you swallow something, you're going to have to wait to metabolize that and for it to take effect. So there's purpose for different types of dosage forms. But I think that we did always have our eye towards like, how can we use some of the mastery of effectiveness that exists in a traditional pharma world and bring it over to cannabis so that the product can be targeted and the product can be effective in a very specific way.
Well, you only get one chance in life to be a first mover when you take first moves. So, to your family and to everything you guys are doing and creating products that are helping folks. So, I'm coming to your the grow. I would say. I mean, you tell me what your laboratory because you literally have threatened, and I've been threatened for years to be put into the Mike TV outfit. You're going to beam me up. Hey, mom, look at me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be in the white suit in 2 minutes explain because next week I'm gonna like really ask you about what I'm gonna see because I know you could take me because it's I'm gonna be there half a day. I'm gonna see a lot. So even summing that up in 20 or 30 minutes is gonna be hard. But in 2 minutes, enlighten my audience and anyone out there as to what happens when I show up. Listen, I've been to the White House a couple times. I've been I've been behind the rope. I even went. Here's a little off the radar for you. I went to the Star in Frisco, Texas, a couple weeks ago. Jerry Jones's kingdom, where his team practices, and it's unlike anything I've ever seen. So I've seen some unique things. This is this is going to be unique for me. So I'm really looking forward. It's sort of like Epcot for me, I think.
Yeah. So, well, you're right with the reference to Mike TV. You are going to suit up in a white Tyvek suit, hairnet, beard net, booties on your feet, all that stuff. No extra things, jewelry, anything coming in.
All right.
So we run under GMP protocols. So you'll
What
be
is that?
seeing the good manufacturing practices. So that's a third party accreditation that we have that's consistent with products that are validated by the FDA, right? So again, like places that this industry doesn't exist, but where we are aligned to because it's where we believe we'll get in the future and where we want to get, right? When we are federally legal. So we're sort of built for it today. But it means that the way that we produce our products, our supply chain, our training, our standard operating procedures, all of the elements of our operations are to a standard that meets the levels of the FDA. So you're going to suit up. You're going to come through. You're going to suit up for cultivation and suit up for manufacturing or processing, as that license is called. So you'll see in the cultivation space, that's everywhere that we grow the plants, from little tiny babies through to the harvest and packaging.
Is that
And
going to look like
then
a traditional greenhouse as I know it, or no?
no, it's not a greenhouse. It's indoors. So it's inside of a building.
Okay.
And
Okay. Understood. So
it's a
I won't
closed,
see
sterile
glass.
space.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been to
And then
many
on
nurseries and whatnot, and it always has sort of that humid and I'm always amazed when I go to those places that how much love it takes to keep any plant alive. My wife's killed a bunch. We all have the deer eat them. I mean, but I mean, just even in a controlled environment, it's a plant. It needs all the things plants need, right?
yeah, and on the cultivation staff, they a lot of people love the indoors because they get to play mother nature, right? You're controlling all the variables, the light, the temperature, the humidity, the CO2, all the things that the plant needs. You are directing in kind of the ideal scenario.
That's
So
why you can't have me in there wearing my Led Zeppelin belt buckle and just screwing around. I need to because it's a
right,
controlled. I always think about like when they tell you get off the plane somewhere, don't bring fruit in, don't bring
right,
things in. Just anything like that can destroy anything. Crop. It's
right. You
very volatile,
carry it.
right? The crop.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then in the manufacturing side, you're going to see a variety of spaces that are dedicated to producing specific products, right? So topicals in one room, tablets in another, chews in a third. We have an analytical lab on site where we do the extraction. So the extraction is we take the cannabis and we extract the oil from it. That oil is what gets infused into any finished good that you purchase. So if you buy a chew or a tablet or a topical, an elixir, all those products have the oil as how they get the cannabinoids inside.
And all the same oil, right?
All the same, yeah. So all of our flour, we sell the flour from our cultivation business to our manufacturing business, and then they extract the oil from that flour.
Wendy Bronfein, I'm just scratching the surface. I mean, I had scratch and sniff lottery tickets here this week, and from our friends at the Maryland Lottery, and so I'm always learning about all of this. But I did the ice cream tour at the factory at the Wise Markets, like, and I had to put a whole suit, like, so I'm ready to suit up. I had to put my hair back. I got a lot of hair now, but I'll put it back, and I'm going to be blown away, right? I mean, I'm literally, just from a science standpoint, my sort of weirdly inquisitive journalistic mind, I'm going to be blown away, right?
Yes. I mean, I think, I'm a little bit numb to it because I've been in there a number of times, but when I open any given door and you see all the plants inside of a room, and then I tell you how many rooms there are like that, that usually kind of blows people's mind. And I think one of the other things is that the aroma of cannabis comes through at the end of the process, right? As the plant matures, the terpenes are developing on those buds, and that's what you smell. And so for a lot of the spaces, when the plant is younger in its life cycle, it just kind of smells like a lawn and garden center, right? Like they're just plants growing. They have no real aroma to them that you would associate with cannabis. But as the plant gets to full maturity, harvested, and through that process, that's when you smell cannabis type smells. And you can even, depending on what has been harvested, it kind of gets almost into that kind of like bougie wine place where you're like, I smell like citrus notes or this, right? Because depending on the terpenes that are the most present, that's what's drawing the aromas out.
All right. Well, the education has begun exactly the way we said it would. Curio Wellness is here, and our friends at Far and Daughter. If you drive by Timonium, also locations. I hope, please plug Cecil County because I have a great casino I work with up there as well.
Farm Kent Wellness, Elkton, Maryland.
All right. Well, so available everywhere, and stop by, learn a little bit more. You can certainly go to CurioWellness.com. It's a whole educational thing there. Stop by over on York Road, near Timonium, just south of Timonium Road, and visit with them. Get yourself a shirt. I got to get me a purple shirt, and I'm a blunt person, which I'm just going to wear that out. Give me two of those because I'm going to wear through that. And of course, all of our information up at BaltimorePositive.com. And my little tour will include maybe pictures of me in the Mike TV suit next week if you follow us out on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any of those places we go. I think we covered it all. Any specials, anything going on this week for customers who need to know? I know we had a vape thing going on last week, right?
Yeah, so last week we were saying there's a promo going on at a number of dispensaries that we partnered with where you buy 2 vapes and you get a gift with purchase, which is a rechargeable battery while supplies last. So if any of those partners still have them in stock, go grab one.
I went to Wendy about a year and a half ago, said, I want to learn about this stuff. How everybody else learned about it. Other people will be interested in it too. So I always think about that too when I'm in a store thinking these people probably have the same questions I have, and they're in and out and they're chasing on the internet or not a trusted resource. So we hope we can become a trusted resource around here. If you have questions, you can certainly find our friends at Curio Wellness as well. They are partnering with us to bring us 25 years. They brought me the cupcake and the fireworks and all the memories. This week, lots and lots of community stuff. And we worked with Ed Block for so many years, wrote so many checks, did so many cool things, putting all that up for our 25 years of community service, including continuing our education about all things cannabis and wellness. I'll be there next week doing that as well. The countdown next week moves to the barn and our infamous Monday night Purple Live show. So lots of folks out there with, man, I got pictures of like John Ogden and I in 1997 with like someone's baby. And then I think, that kid's like 27 now. So this is going to be fun throwing this out on social media. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570. Towson, Baltimore. We'll get back to those fearless Ravens and Luke out of Owings Mills right after this.